This 4-year-old beggar girl sees men mocking a millionaire, weeping at his son's grave. But she grabs a stick and does something that shocks everyone. Watch until the end. You won't regret it. Comment what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The biting chill of the early morning air made Iris shiver as she huddled between the wet cardboard boxes that served as her shelter. At 4 years old, the little girl had already learned that cemeteries were safer than the streets at night. Fewer people, fewer dangers, and a strange peace that calmed her when the world seemed too big for her small shoulders. Her torn and dirty clothes told the story of more than a year living as best she could, ever since her mother, Celeste, had disappeared from her life so abruptly that she still expected to wake up and find her there, smiling as before. That morning in June, as the first rays of sunlight began to warm the old stones of the cemetery, Iris heard voices approaching. She quickly hid behind the Oakhaven family mausoleum, an imposing marble monument that stood out among the simpler graves. The voices became clearer, and she recognized the tone of mockery and cruelty that she had learned to fear in adults. "Look who's back here crying like a baby," said a gruff voice, followed by malicious laughter. Big shot Benedict Ben Vance, crying over his dead kid. Iris peered cautiously and saw 3 men in expensive suits surrounding an older man who was kneeling before a small headstone. The kneeling man had graying hair and was weeping without regard for who might see. His tears fell on the wilted flowers he held in trembling hands. 2 years already, Ben," continued another of the men. "And you still come here to wallow? How pathetic. Maybe if you weren't such a Scrooge with your employees, God wouldn't have taken your boy." "That's right," added the third, kicking a stone that rolled until it hit the headstone. "How many families have you ruined with your layoffs? How many fathers couldn't feed their kids because of you? Now you know how it feels to suffer." Benedict Ben Vance, at 52, was known throughout the region as a ruthless businessman. Owner of one of the largest construction companies in upstate New York, he had built his fortune without caring whom he stepped on along the way. But there, before the grave of Theo, his 8-year-old son who had died in a terrible accident, he was just a heartbroken father who couldn't accept the loss. "You don't understand," murmured Ben, his voice choked with emotion. "He was everything to me. My boy was all I had that was good in this world." "Had indeed," one of the men laughed cruelly. "And now you have nothing. Pretty good justice, don't you think?" Iris felt something churn in her little chest. Even though she was so young, she recognized the pain in that weeping. It was the same pain she felt when she thought of her mother, the same loneliness that accompanied her every night. She couldn't understand why those men were being so cruel to someone who was already suffering. Without thinking too much, the girl came out of her hiding place. Her bare feet made little noise on the damp grass as she approached the group. The men stopped laughing when they saw her, a small, dirty child with tangled hair and clothes that clearly weren't hers. "What's this?" asked one of them, frowning. "A street kid here in the cemetery." Iris said nothing. She simply crouched next to Theo's grave and picked up a small twig that had fallen from a nearby tree. With careful movements, she began to draw on the muddy ground around the headstone. Her childish strokes formed simple little flowers, one next to the other, creating an imaginary garden around the tomb. The men fell silent, watching the scene with growing embarrassment. There was something in the purity of that gesture that made their cruel words echo even more dirtily in their own ears. Ben raised his tear-reddened eyes and looked at the girl who was drawing intently. She had made a small heart next to the flowers and whispered softly, "The boy isn't alone. The flowers will keep him company." One of the men cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Let's go," he said, avoiding looking at Ben. "This is getting weird." The 3 walked away quickly, their cruel laughter replaced by a heavy silence. Iris continued drawing, oblivious to the fact that she had just done something extraordinary with her simplicity. Ben watched the girl for long minutes. When she finished her drawings, she sat back on her heels and smiled shyly at him. "All done," she said in her tiny voice. "Now the boy has a pretty garden." "Why did you do that?" asked Ben, still processing what had happened. "Because you were sad," Iris replied naturally, "and nobody should be sad alone." In those simple words, Ben felt something stir in his hardened chest. For the first time in 2 years, someone had shown compassion for his pain without wanting anything in return, and that person was a 4-year-old child who clearly had nothing but had offered what she could. Kindness. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Iris," she replied, wiping her dirty hands on her clothes. "Like the flowers my mom liked." "And where is your mother, Iris?" The girl's smile faltered for an instant. "She went away, but I know she'll come back someday." Ben's heart tightened. There was something in the child's innocent hope that touched him deeply. "Do you live around here?" Iris pointed to the trees at the back of the cemetery. "Over there. I made a little house out of boxes. It's warm." The reality of the situation hit Ben like a punch. That child was living alone in the cemetery, surviving as best she could, and yet she had found the strength to comfort a suffering stranger. "Are you hungry?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Iris's eyes lit up, but she tried to hide it. "Sometimes, but I know how to find food. I'm smart." Ben stood up, wiping the tears from his face. He looked one last time at Theo's grave, now decorated with Iris's simple drawings, and felt that something had changed. He didn't know what yet, but that girl had touched a part of his soul that he thought had died with his son. "Iris," he said, picking up the wilted flowers he had brought, "tomorrow I'll come back here. You'll be around?" "I always am," she replied, already heading back to her makeshift shelter. "Every day I come to talk to the people who live here. They're lonely, like me." As he watched the small figure walk away among the trees, Ben felt that his life had just taken a completely unexpected turn, and for the first time since Theo's loss, he had something to look forward to the next day. Ben couldn't sleep that night. Lying in his king-size bed, in the master bedroom of his empty mansion, he couldn't stop thinking about the girl in the cemetery, Iris. The name echoed in his mind, along with the image of those big, hopeful eyes, so different from the emptiness he had felt for 2 years. When the sun rose, he was already dressed and on his way to the cemetery, carrying a bag with bread rolls, fruit, and steaming hot chocolate. He found Iris exactly where she had said she would be, sitting next to Theo's grave, talking softly to the headstone as if it were a real person. She was wearing the same clothes as the day before, but she had tried to comb her hair with her fingers and wash her face with water from a small puddle nearby. "Good morning, Theo," she said softly. "The sun is pretty today, can you see it? And look, your daddy came back to visit you." Ben approached in silence, impressed by the child's naturalness. When Iris saw him, her face lit up with a genuine smile. "You really came back," she exclaimed, clapping her hands. "I told Theo you would come back. I brought some things for you," said Ben, holding out the bag. "You must be hungry." Iris took the bag carefully, as if it were a treasure. When she saw the contents, her eyes widened. "Wow, that's a lot of food," she said, grabbing a roll. But before taking the first bite, she stopped and looked around. "Can I share with Mrs. Dubois?" "Who's Mrs. Dubois?" asked Ben, curious. "An old lady who also lives around here. She's very thin and sometimes cries at night. I always share my food with her." Ben felt something clench in his chest. "Sure, you can share." Iris ran off towards the trees and returned a few minutes later pulling an elderly woman by the hand, with completely white hair and clothes even more torn than hers. The woman walked slowly, leaning on a makeshift cane made from a thick branch. "Mrs. Dubois, look how much food we got," said Iris excitedly. "Mr. Vance brought it for us." Mrs. Dubois looked at Ben distrustfully. At 71 years old, she had learned not to trust strangers easily, especially well-dressed men. "Don't need anything, young man," she said with dignity. I'm not a beggar. I know you're not, Ben replied respectfully. It's just a shared breakfast between friends. Something in his tone of voice made Mrs. Dubois relax a little. The three sat on the grass, near Theo's grave, and shared the meal in silence. Ben watched as Iris took care of the elderly lady, breaking the bread into small pieces and making sure she drank the hot chocolate slowly. "How did you two meet?" he asked eventually. "I found Mrs. Dubois crying one night," Iris explained. "She was very cold, so I shared my blanket with her. We've been friends ever since." Mrs. Dubois looked at the girl affectionately. "This child has a heart bigger than her body," she said. "She takes care of everyone she finds around here." "And how did you come to live here?" asked Ben carefully. Mrs. Dubois sighed deeply. "I was scammed by some men who claimed to be lawyers. I lost my house, my savings, everything. My children live far away and don't even know I'm like this. I'm ashamed to tell them." "And you, Iris? You already told me your mother went away, but Mum got sick in her head," explained the girl with a simplicity that was heartbreaking. "She started to forget me, forget to eat, forget everything. One day some men in white coats took her away. They said it was for her to get better, but it's been a long time." Ben clenched his fists. Celeste, Iris's mother, had clearly been committed to some psychiatric institution, and the child had been abandoned to her fate. "And nobody took care of you after that?" "At first I stayed in a house with other kids," Iris said. "But they were mean to me, and the adults yelled a lot. So I ran away and came to live here. It's quieter here, and the people buried here are nice to me." The innocence of that explanation made Ben stand up abruptly, walking a few steps to process what he had heard. A 4-year-old child had chosen to live alone in a cemetery because it was better than the municipal shelter. What did that say about the world they lived in? "Mr. Vance," said Iris, tugging on his pants leg, "are you mad?" He crouched down to her level. "I'm not mad at you, Iris. I'm mad at other things. My mum used to get mad at other things too, before she got sick," she said thoughtfully. "She said the world was too ugly for children like me." At that moment, Ben made a decision that would change everything. "Iris, what if I brought you food every day? Would you and Mrs. Dubois accept that?" The girl's eyes lit up. "Every day? You promise?" "I promise." "But why do you want to do that?" asked Mrs. Dubois, still suspicious. Ben looked at Theo's grave, where Iris's drawings were still visible on the ground. "Because you made me remember something important that I had forgotten." "What?" asked Iris, curious. "How important it is to take care of the people who need us." During the following days, Ben established a routine that he himself did not fully understand. Every morning, he stopped at a bakery on the way to the cemetery and bought enough food for Iris, Mrs. Dubois, and a few other homeless people that the girl had adopted as family. He discovered that she knew at least 6 different people who lived nearby and always divided everything equally among them all. "How can you be so generous?" he asked one morning, watching Iris hand half of her sandwich to an elderly man who had appeared. "Mom taught me that when we share, the food tastes better," she replied simply. "And when everyone eats together, no one is sad." These daily conversations began to change something fundamental in Ben. For 2 years, he had isolated himself from the world, turning his pain at the loss of his son into bitterness against everything and everyone. His employees feared him, his business partners avoided him, and he had become known as one of the cruelest businessmen in the region. But there, sitting on the damp ground of the cemetery, listening to Iris's simple stories about how she took care of her invisible friends, buried there, he began to remember who he had been before the tragedy. He remembered when Theo was little, and he would take him to feed the ducks in the park, how his sons smiled when they saw someone being kind to another person. "Iris," he said on a drizzly morning, when the girl was particularly quiet, "aren't you ever angry with your mother for leaving you?" She thought for a long time before answering. "Sometimes I'm sad," she admitted. But Mrs. Dubois explained to me that when people get sick in their head, it's not their fault. It's like when we get a fever and say strange things, only it doesn't go away. And aren't you afraid to be here alone? I'm not alone, she said, pointing around. I have Mrs. Dubois. I have Mr. Johnson, who lives nearby. I have you, who comes to visit me. And I have all the people who live under the ground. They take care of me at night. The child's innocent faith amid such harsh circumstances touched Ben in a way he hadn't experienced in years. That afternoon, when he returned to his company, something had changed in his behavior. Instead of yelling at his secretary for a minor mistake, he simply asked her to correct it. When an employee spilled coffee on some documents, instead of exploding in fury, Ben asked if he was okay. His employees noticed the difference immediately, whispering among themselves about the inexplicable change in their boss's behavior. Valerie Stevens, his 45-year-old partner and constant rival in business, was the first to confront him directly. "What's going on with you, Ben?" she asked, barging into his office without ceremony. "The employees are saying you've become a saint." "This isn't normal." Ben looked at her for a long moment. Valerie had always been ambitious and calculating, characteristics that he respected in the business world, even when they competed against each other. But now, for the first time, he wondered if there was something deeper behind that hard facade. "Maybe I'm just tired of being a jerk," he replied simply. "A jerk?" she laughed. "Ben, being a jerk is what made you rich. It's what keeps this company running. You can't start going soft now." But even as she spoke, Valerie noticed something different in her partner's eyes. There was a peace there that she hadn't seen in years, not since before Theo's death. And that intrigued her more than she cared to admit. The weeks passed, and Ben's routine became sacred. Every morning he woke up thinking about Iris and the friends she had gathered around her in the cemetery. The girl had become the center of a small community of people forgotten by society, all taking care of each other under her innocent leadership. But it was on a Thursday afternoon that everything changed drastically. Ben had arrived at the cemetery with his usual bag of food when he noticed something different. Iris was sitting alone next to Theo's grave, but she wasn't drawing or chatting cheerfully as usual. She was crying silently, curled up like an injured sparrow. "Iris, what happened?" he asked, rushing to kneel beside her. "They took Mrs. Dubois," sobbed the girl. "Some men in uniforms came this morning and said she couldn't stay here. She screamed my name when they took her, but I hid behind the tree because I was scared." Ben's heart tightened. "Where did they take her?" "I don't know," cried Iris. "She promised she would never leave me alone, but now she's gone, just like my mom." At that moment, Ben saw the real fragility of the situation. Iris was completely helpless, living in a condition that could change at any moment. City officials or social workers could show up at any time and take her away too. "Listen, Iris," he said, taking her small hands in his. "I'm going to find out where they took Mrs. Dubois, okay? And I'm going to do everything I can to bring her back." "You really promise?" she asked, looking at him with desperate hope. "I promise." That afternoon, Ben cancelled all his meetings and began a frantic search for Mrs. Dubois. Using his influence and contacts, he discovered that she had been taken to a municipal shelter on the outskirts of town, a place known for its poor conditions. When he arrived there, he found the elderly woman in a deplorable state, lost among dozens of other abandoned seniors, many of whom showed clear signs of neglect. "Mr. Vance!" exclaimed Mrs. Dubois when she saw him, trying to get up from the narrow bed where she was lying. "How did you find me? And Iris? Is she okay?" "Iris is fine, but worried about you," he replied, shocked by the conditions of the place. "I came to get you out of here." The director of the shelter, a stern woman named Martha, intervened immediately. "You can't just take a resident. There are procedures, documents." "How much?" asked Ben directly. "Well, what do you mean? How much does it cost to regularize her situation and allow her to leave here today?" Martha hesitated, clearly calculating how much she could demand from an obviously wealthy man. Well, there are administrative fees, processing costs. Let's say $5,000. Ben didn't even flinch. He took the money out of his wallet right there and placed it on the table. Prepare the papers. Mrs. Dubois is leaving with me today. An hour later, he was back at the cemetery with Mrs. Dubois, who was crying with joy at reuniting with Iris. The girl threw herself into the elderly woman's arms as if she were her own grandmother. "I knew you would come back," said Iris between tears. "I knew Mr. Vance promised, and he always keeps his promises." But watching the scene, Ben realized that he had only postponed the problem. Mrs. Dubois still had nowhere to go, and Iris continued to live in unacceptable conditions. Something needed to change more permanently. "Listen," he said, sitting on the ground next to the two. "I have a proposal to make." Iris and Mrs. Dubois looked at him attentively. "I have a very big house, with many empty rooms. How about you come live with me for a while?" The silence that followed was deafening. Iris widened her eyes while Mrs. Dubois frowned with distrust. "Mr. Vance," said the elderly woman carefully, "that's very generous, but why would you do that? What do you want in return?" "Nothing," he replied honestly. I don't want you to keep suffering when I can help." "But, Mr. Vance," said Iris, worried, "if I go live in your house, who will take care of my friends here? Who will keep Theo company?" The question touched Ben deeply. Even in a situation of extreme vulnerability, the girl's first concern was for other people. "We can continue coming here every day," he promised, "and we can bring food for your friends too. And can I draw new flowers for Theo?" "Whenever you want." That night, for the first time in over a year, Iris slept in a real bed. Ben had prepared one of the guest rooms for her, with clean sheets and a warm blanket. Mrs. Dubois stayed in the room next door, still distrustful but grateful to have a safe roof over her head. But the presence of the two women in Ben's mansion did not go unnoticed. The next day, Valerie showed up at his house unannounced, clearly furious. "Have you completely lost it?" she shouted as soon as he opened the door. "The whole town is talking about you bringing homeless people to live in your house." "They're not homeless," Ben replied calmly. "They're people who needed help." "Ben, you're a respected businessman. You can't set this kind of example. What will your partners think? What will the clients say?" "Frankly, Valerie, I don't care." Valerie was speechless for a moment. "You don't care? You built an empire based on your reputation as a tough, ruthless man. Now you want to throw it all away because of a street kid?" At that moment, Iris appeared in the room, wearing a clean dress that Ben had bought for her that morning. She was carrying a drawing in her small hands. "Mr. Vance," she said shyly, "I drew a flower for the pretty lady." She held out the paper to Valerie, who looked at the drawing with a confused expression. It was a simple flower, colored with crayon, but there was something special about the way it had been made. "It's beautiful," said Valerie automatically, not quite knowing how to react. "It's so you won't be mad anymore," explained Iris with her characteristic innocence. "When people are mad, it's because they're sad inside. Flowers help take away the sadness." Valerie looked at that little child who had just offered her a gift made with care, then looked at Ben, who was watching the scene with a soft smile on his face. She really is special," murmured Valerie, putting the drawing in her purse almost without realizing it. "She is," agreed Ben, "and she's teaching me things that I had forgotten a long time ago." In the following days, the transformation in Ben became even more evident. At the company, he implemented changes that shocked all the employees. He raised salaries, improved working conditions, and for the first time in years, began to treat his employees like human beings, not like numbers on a spreadsheet. But these changes did not go unnoticed by his competitors. Albert Vance, Ben's younger brother and manager of the company's branch in a nearby city, appeared in his office on a Monday morning with a worried expression. "Ben, I need to talk to you about these adjustments you're making, said Albert, closing the office door behind him. What adjustments? The salary increases, the improvements in working conditions, all of that. It's creating a dangerous precedent. Dangerous for whom? For all of us. The other businessmen in the region are complaining. They say you're coddling the employees, creating unrealistic expectations. This could affect the entire local industry. Ben leaned back in his chair, observing his brother with a calmness he hadn't felt in years. So what? What do you mean, so what? Ben, you've always been the most sensible one among us. You've always known that in business there's no room for sentimentality. Maybe I've been wrong all these years. Albert leaned forward, clearly alarmed. What's going on with you? Ever since you brought that girl into your house, you've been different. I'm better. Better. You're losing money, losing respect in the market, making enemies, and gaining something much more valuable, interrupted Ben. I'm getting my humanity back. That afternoon, when he arrived home, he found Iris in the garden, teaching Mrs. Dubois how to draw flowers on the ground with twigs. The two were laughing together, creating an atmosphere of peace that he had never experienced in his own home. Mr. Vance, shouted Iris when she saw him, running to hug his legs. Look how many flowers we made. One for each person we like. Looking at that improvised garden on the ground, Ben felt that he had finally found something that was worth more than all the money in the world. But in the back of his mind, a concern grew. How many enemies were his changes creating? And how long would he have before someone tried to destroy the new life he was building? The harmony of Ben's new life lasted exactly 3 weeks. It was on a Tuesday morning that he woke up to the sound of raised voices in the garden of his house. When he looked out the window, he saw 2 men in dark suits talking to Iris, who was holding Mrs. Dubois' hand tightly. The girl looked scared, but maintained her characteristic courageous posture. Ben ran down the stairs and out into the garden, where he found the 2 men showing official documents to Mrs. Dubois. "What's going on here?" he asked, placing himself protectively in front of Iris. "Mr. Vance," said the taller of the 2 men, "I'm social worker Robert Smith, and this is my colleague Fernando. We received an anonymous report about the irregular situation of this child." Ben's heart raced. "What kind of report?" "That you are keeping a minor in your residence without the proper legal procedures," explained Robert, consulting a clipboard. "The child should be in state care, not in a private home." "I'm not doing anything wrong," protested Ben. "I just offered shelter to someone who needed it." "We understand your good intentions," said Fernando with a condescending tone, "but there are protocols to be followed. The girl needs to undergo a complete evaluation before any temporary guardianship arrangement can be considered." Iris clung to Ben's leg, her big eyes full of fear. "Mr. Vance, are they going to take me away?" "They're not," he said firmly, picking her up. "I won't let them." "Mr. Vance," said Robert, "I understand that you've become fond of the child, but you need to understand that you can't just decide to take care of a minor without following the correct procedures. That's technically kidnapping." "Kidnapping," Ben exploded. "I saved this girl from living on the streets." "And that's commendable," said Fernando. "But now she needs to go to a suitable institution while we investigate her family situation and assess guardianship options." Mrs. Dubois, who had remained silent, stepped forward. "Please, gentlemen," she said with dignity, "this child has already suffered too much. Here she is safe, well cared for, happy." "Ma'am, with all due respect," interrupted Robert, "your situation is also irregular. There are no records that you have family or adequate means of support." At that moment, Iris began to cry. It wasn't the loud crying of a childish tantrum, but the silent, desperate crying of someone who had already lost too many important people in their life. "I don't want to go away," she sobbed, clinging to Ben's neck. "Please don't take me away. I promise I'll be a good girl." The child's plea broke the hearts of everyone present, including the social workers, who clearly weren't enjoying the situation. "Look," said Ben, trying to remain calm. Give me a deadline. Let them stay here while I regularize all the necessary paperwork. I have resources, I have a suitable house, I can offer everything Iris needs. Robert and Fernando exchanged glances. Mr. Vance, it's not that simple. The adoption or guardianship process is long and complex, and in the meantime, the child should be under official care. How long? Asked Ben desperately. Months, maybe years, replied Fernando, depending on whether we can locate relatives or not. Years? Repeated Ben, incredulous. You want to separate a child from her caretaker for years? Those are the procedures, said Robert with a sigh. We didn't make the rules. At that moment, a familiar voice echoed from the gate. Excuse me, can I know what's going on here? Everyone turned to see Valerie approaching with determined steps. She was wearing one of her best suits and carrying a leather briefcase, looking every inch the successful businesswoman that she was. Miss Stevens, said Ben, surprised by her presence. How did you know that? I have my contacts, she replied dryly, then turned to the social workers. Gentlemen, I'm an attorney and business partner of Mr. Vance. I would like to see the documents you authorize you to remove this child. Robert hesitated. Ma'am, we are accredited social workers. That doesn't answer my question, said Valerie, holding out her hand. The documents, please. As she examined the papers, Iris whispered in Ben's ear, Is the pretty lady going to help us? I hope so, he murmured back. Valerie returned the documents with a thoughtful expression. These documents only authorize an assessment of the situation, not an immediate removal of the child. Furthermore, I don't see any evidence of neglect or abuse on the part of Mr. Vance. The situation is irregular, insisted Fernando. Irregular, perhaps, but not illegal, retorted Valerie, and certainly not justifying the traumatic removal of a child from an environment where she is visibly well cared for. Robert frowned. Ma'am, with all due respect, but— No, with all due respect, interrupted Valerie, assuming the authoritative tone she used in courtrooms. You have been misled. Someone sent you here with false information, probably hoping to cause exactly this type of unnecessary trauma. Ben looked at her with growing admiration. Valerie was fighting for Iris with a passion that he didn't expect from her. What are you implying? Asked Robert. I'm saying clearly that someone made a malicious report to harm my client, said Valerie, and I suggest you investigate who it was before continuing with this inappropriate procedure. The two social workers looked at each other, clearly uncomfortable. We'll need to consult our superiors, said Fernando finally. Do that, said Valerie, and while you do, Iris stays where she is, in a loving home with people who care about her well-being. After the men left, promising to return with guidance from their supervisors, Valerie knelt in front of Iris. Hi, little one, she said gently. Remember me? Yes, replied Iris, still clinging to Ben. You're the pretty lady who got my flower. That's right, and you know what I did with that flower? Iris shook her head. I put it on the wall of my office right in front of my desk, so I can look at it every day. Iris's eyes lit up a little. Really? Really. And now I want to make you a promise. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you keep living here with your Ben and Mrs. Dubois, okay? You really promise? I promise. That afternoon, after Iris went to play in the garden with Mrs. Dubois, Ben and Valerie talked in the living room. Why did you do that? He asked. Why did you help me? Valerie was silent for a long moment. Because that girl reminded me of something I had forgotten a long time ago. What? Of when I was a kid and needed to be too strong, too soon, she said, looking out the window where Iris was drawing flowers on the ground with twigs. My parents died when I was 7. I was raised by an aunt who saw me as a burden. I learned to be tough, calculating, not to trust anyone. Ben was surprised by the revelation. He had never imagined that Valerie had such a difficult past. When I saw that girl giving me a drawing yesterday, I saw something I never had myself, she continued. Protected innocence, kindness preserved even after suffering. And I realize that you're right. Some things are more important than money or power. Valerie, but that doesn't change the fact that someone is trying to harm you, she said, returning to her practical tone. The report wasn't a coincidence. Someone wants to separate you from Iris. But who? And why? I don't know who yet, she replied, but I know why. Your changes at the company are bothering people. Powerful people who profit when workers are mistreated. At that moment, as if invoked by the conversation, Ben's phone rang. It was Albert. Ben, said his brother's tense voice, we need to talk urgently. There are very important people wanting a meeting with you. And these aren't requests you can refuse. The implicit threat in Albert's voice made Ben's blood run cold. He looked out the window at Iris playing happily in the garden, oblivious to the danger that was forming around them. The war for his new life had officially begun. The meeting took place at the most exclusive club in town, a place where only the wealthiest and most influential businessmen had access. Ben arrived alone, as instructed, and found 5 men waiting for him in a private room overlooking the golf course. He recognized them all. They were the owners of the main companies in the region, men who controlled jobs, local policies, and, in many cases, the lives of thousands of families. Ben, said Charles Matthews, the oldest of the group and owner of a supermarket chain. Thank you for coming. Sit down. The atmosphere was tense, charged with a poorly disguised hostility. Ben sat in the only empty chair, realizing that it had been deliberately positioned so that everyone else could look down on him. Let's get straight to the point, said George Castle, owner of several farms in the region. Your recent changes are causing serious problems for all of us. What kind of problems? Asked Ben, keeping his voice calm. You know exactly what problems, intervened Ralph Pierce, owner of a textile factory. Uncontrolled salary increases, improvements in working conditions that cost a fortune, reduced working hours. This is creating unrealistic expectations in the workers. Expectations of being treated like human beings? Retorted Ben. Expectations of salaries and benefits that the rest of us can't or don't want to pay, said Charles coldly. Your employees are spreading ideas among the workers of our companies. We've already had 3 strikes this week asking for the same improvements you've offered. Ben began to understand the magnitude of what he had unleashed. His changes weren't affecting just his own company, but the entire local economic structure that was based on the exploitation of underpaid workers. That's not my problem, he said. If you want to keep your employees, pay fair wages. Fair according to whom? Exploded Ralph. Ben, you're destroying decades of tacit agreements that keep our economy running. Agreements that exploit vulnerable people, replied Ben, feeling the anger grow. Agreements that keep entire families in poverty while we get richer and richer. So what? Said George brutally. That's how it's always been. You yourself participated in this system for years and benefited from it as much as any of us. I've changed. Changed because of what? A street kid? Asked Charles with disdain. Ben, this is ridiculous. You're throwing away an empire because of cheap sentimentality. The mention of Iris made Ben's blood boil. Leave her out of this. Impossible, said a new voice. Albert had entered the room unnoticed and now sat next to the other businessman. The girl is at the center of all this, brother. She's the one making you make these irrational decisions. Albert, said Ben, shocked by the betrayal. You're with them? I'm trying to save our family and our business, replied his brother. You've lost your mind, Ben. Since you brought that child home, you've turned into someone else. I've turned into a better person. You've turned into a dangerous person, corrected Charles. Dangerous to the balance that keeps this region prosperous. Ralph leaned forward, assuming an almost paternal tone. Ben, we've been your friends for decades. We're trying to help you see reason before it's too late. Too late for what? To save what you've built, said George. You have contracts with all of our companies, constructions, renovations, expansion projects. If you continue down this path, all these contracts will be cancelled. The financial impact would be devastating. Ben quickly calculated that he would lose at least 60% of his annual revenue if those men carried out their threat. "You're blackmailing me," he said. "We're offering you a choice," corrected Charles. "Go back to the old methods, normal salaries, standard working conditions, strict discipline, and we keep our business agreements. Continue with this humanitarian madness, and we'll be forced to find other suppliers." "And the girl?" asked Albert softly. "You need to understand, brother, that a street child cannot be the basis for business decisions that affect hundreds of families. Hundreds of families of employees that you're willing to exploit," retorted Ben. "Families who have jobs because of our system," said Ralph. "Jobs that will disappear if you continue destabilizing our local economy." The room fell silent for a few minutes. Ben looked at each of those men, people he had known for years, with whom he had done business, played golf, shared dinners. Now he saw in them something he had previously chosen to ignore, a calculating coldness that put profit above any human consideration. "What if I refuse?" he asked finally. "Then you'll find out what happens when someone tries to change a system that has worked for generations," said Charles, his voice laden with threat. "What kind of threat is that?" "It's not a threat," said George. "It's a realization. You have a company, employees, responsibilities, and you have a girl to raise now. It would be a shame if complications made it difficult for you to fulfill those responsibilities." The reference to Iris made Ben stand up abruptly. "If you touch her—" "No one's going to touch her," said Albert quickly. "But the system has its own ways of protecting itself. Social workers may come back with stricter orders. Inspections may find irregularities in your company. Suppliers may have problems delivering materials on time." "You're cowards," said Ben, walking towards the door. "We're realists," replied Charles. "And you have a week to make your decision." Ben left the meeting with the world spinning around him. On the way home, he called Valerie and told her everything that had happened. "They're serious," she said after listening to everything. "These men control practically the entire local economy. If they decide to boycott you, it will be very difficult to keep your company running. And if I give in, if I go back to treating my employees like before, then you save your business but lose your soul, and Iris loses the man who has become a father figure to her." "What kind of choice is that?" asked Ben, desperate. "The hardest you've ever had to make," replied Valerie, "but also the most important." When he arrived home, he found Iris waiting for him in the garden, as she always did. She ran to hug him, noticing immediately that something was wrong. "Mr. Vance, why are you sad?" she asked, touching his face gently. "I'm just worried about some work things," he said, trying to smile. "Do you want me to draw flowers for you?" "Flowers always help me when I'm worried." Looking at that child who had changed his life completely, Ben felt the weight of the decision he needed to make. Protecting her would mean keeping his business, but destroying everything she had taught him to believe in. Maintaining his principles would mean risking losing everything, including perhaps Iris herself, if he could no longer support her. "Iris," he said, kneeling down to her level, "if anything happens, if for some reason I can no longer take care of you, I want you to know that you changed my life for the better." "Nothing's going to happen," she said with the innocent confidence that only children possess. "You're strong, and I'll always draw flowers to help you be strong too." That night, while Iris slept peacefully, Ben stayed awake late, knowing that the next few days would determine not only his future, but the future of the girl who had become the most important thing in his life. The war had been declared, and he needed to choose what kind of man he wanted to become. Ben's decision came in a way he didn't expect. The next morning, he woke up to the sound of Iris talking happily with Mrs. Dubois in the kitchen. The two were preparing breakfast together, the girl standing on a chair to reach the counter, while the elderly woman patiently guided her on how to make pancakes. "Be careful not to burn yourself, my dear," said Mrs. Dubois. "The fire can hurt." "I know," replied Iris, focused on turning a pancake. "But if we're careful and do it with love, everything tastes good." Watching that simple but caring scene, Ben felt something crystallize in his chest. For years, he had pursued wealth and power, accumulating money with no real purpose beyond the accumulation itself. Now, for the first time, he had something that really mattered, a chosen family based on love and mutual care. "Good morning, Mr. Vance," shouted Iris when she saw him, running to hug him with her hands still covered in flour. "We made pancakes for you." "They're delicious," he said, tasting one of them. "You two are great cooks." "Mrs. Dubois said that when we cook together, the food tastes like family," said Iris, returning to the chair next to the stove. "And she's right," agreed Ben, looking at Mrs. Dubois with gratitude. At that moment, his phone rang. It was Valerie, and her voice was tense. "Ben, I need to tell you something urgent. I found out who made the report to the social workers." "Who was it?" "Albert. He confirmed it himself when he tried to convince me to side with him in this war against you." His brother's betrayal hurt more than Ben expected. "Did he offer you anything?" "The presidency of the company when you're removed," she said bitterly. "He thinks I can be bought like anyone else." "And what was your answer?" "That he can shove the presidency where the sun don't shine," said Valerie, making Ben smile for the first time in days. "Ben, I've made a decision. I'm going to resign my stake in the company and open my own law firm." "Valerie, you don't have to do that." "I do. I can no longer be part of a system that exploits people. That girl opened my eyes to things I had chosen to ignore." That afternoon, Ben called a meeting with all of his employees in the company yard. It was the first time in years that he spoke directly to all of them, without intermediaries or supervisors. "I want you all to know," he began, looking at the curious faces before him, "that in the coming days, our company may face some difficulties. Some of our major clients are threatening to cancel contracts because they don't approve of the improvements I've made to your working conditions." A murmur of concern rippled through the crowd. Many of those workers had families to support and couldn't afford to lose their jobs. "But I want to make one thing clear," Benedict continued, raising his voice. "I will not back down on the changes I've made. You deserve decent wages, safe working conditions, and respect. And if some clients don't like that, then they're not the clients we want." Robert Smith, a bricklayer who had worked for the company for 15 years, raised his hand. "Mr. Vance, with all due respect, if the company closes, we all lose our jobs. Maybe it would be better to accept the client's conditions." "Robert," Benedict said, looking directly at the man, "do you have young children?" "I have 3, Mr. Vance." "And what do you want them to think of you when they grow up? That their father agreed to be exploited to keep a job, or that he fought for dignity even when it was difficult?" Robert was silent, clearly processing the question. "I know it's scary," Benedict continued. "I'm scared too. But sometimes doing the right thing is more important than doing the easy thing." Martha Santos, one of the few women who worked at the company, spoke. "Mr. Vance, in 20 years of working here, you've never treated us like people. We've always just been numbers. In the last few weeks, for the first time, I felt that my work was valued. And it will continue to be," Benedict promised. "Even if it means we have to find new clients, new projects, new paths." In the following days, the threats from the local businessmen began to materialize. 3 large contracts were cancelled, representing a loss of nearly $2 million. Suppliers began to delay deliveries or increase prices without justification. The financial pressure became almost unbearable. But something unexpected happened. On Thursday, Benedict received a visit from a man he didn't know, Edward Rivers, owner of a sustainable construction company from Albany. "Mr. Vance," Edward said, sitting down in Benedict's office, "I heard through mutual contacts about the situation you're facing, and I came to make a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" "My company is expanding into upstate New York, and I need local partners who share our values. We pay fair wages, offer excellent working conditions, and believe that happy employees produce better quality work. And what does that have to do with me? I want to offer you a partnership agreement. Large, lucrative, long-term projects. Enough to compensate for the losses you're having with the local businessman. Benedict was surprised. How did you know about my situation? News travels fast in the business community. And honestly, your reputation for treating employees well reached us. It's exactly the kind of partner we're looking for. That night, Benedict arrived home with renewed energy. He found Iris in the garden, drawing flowers on the ground as she always did when she was thoughtful. "How was your day, my little one?" he asked, sitting down next to her on the grass. "It was good," she said, continuing to draw, "but Mrs. Dubois said you're worried about work." "I was worried," he admitted. "But today I discovered that sometimes, when we lose some things, we gain other things that are better. Like when I lost my mum, but I gained you and Mrs. Dubois." The simplicity of the comparison touched Benedict deeply. Exactly like that. Sometimes losses lead us to better places. "Mr. Vance," Iris said, stopping drawing to look at him, "can I tell you a secret?" "Of course. Sometimes I dream about my mom. In the dream, she's okay. She's not sick in her head anymore. And you know what she tells me?" "What?" "That she's happy because I found a new family that loves me. She says I don't need to be afraid because now I have you to take care of me." Benedict felt his eyes fill with tears. "And she's right. I will always take care of you no matter what happens." "I know," Iris said with absolute confidence. "That's why I'm not afraid of anything anymore." The next morning, Benedict woke up with an iron determination. He called Charles Matthews, the leader of the group of businessmen who had threatened him. "Charles," he said when the man answered, "I have my answer." "We hope you've thought sensibly," Charles replied. "I have, and my answer is no. I will not go back to exploiting my employees to satisfy you." The silence on the other end of the line was long and heavy. "Benedict, you're making a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life." "Maybe," Benedict said, looking out the window at Iris, who was playing in the garden with Mrs. Dubois. "But it will be a mistake that allows me to sleep peacefully every night." "Then let the war begin," Charles said before hanging up. Benedict smiled, putting the phone down. The war had already begun a long time ago. The difference was that now he had chosen his side definitively, the side of love, compassion, and human dignity. And with Iris as his inspiration, he was ready to fight. The retaliation began subtly, but relentlessly. On the Monday following Benedict's refusal, 3 construction material suppliers called, informing him that they could no longer fulfill his orders due to technical problems. On Tuesday, the bank where he had kept the company's accounts for 15 years requested an urgent meeting to review the credit terms. On Wednesday, the municipal government sent inspectors to inspect all ongoing construction projects, finding alleged irregularities that had never been a problem before. Benedict knew that he was being attacked in a coordinated way, but he didn't imagine that the situation would become even more personal. It was on a Thursday afternoon that he received a call that made his blood run cold. "Mr. Vance," said a formal female voice, "this is Constance Almeida from the Children and Youth Services. We have received a new complaint regarding the situation of the minor Iris, who is under your care." "What kind of complaint?" he asked, already feeling his heart race. "Allegations that the child is being used for advertising purposes, that her situation of vulnerability is being exploited to improve the public image of your company. We will need to conduct a new assessment of the situation." "That's ridiculous," Benedict protested. "Who made this complaint?" "That's confidential information, sir, but I will need to visit you tomorrow for a complete interview with the child and an assessment of the living conditions." When he hung up the phone, Benedict found Valerie Stevens waiting in his office. She had arrived minutes before and heard part of the conversation. "They're tightening the screws," she said. "It won't stop here." "What else can they do?" Benedict, these men control half the world around here. They can make your life a living hell in ways you can't even imagine. That night, Benedict tried to maintain normalcy at home, but Iris, with her childlike sensitivity sharpened by months of adversity, sensed that something was wrong. "Mr. Vance," she said during dinner, "you haven't eaten almost anything. Are you sick?" "I'm not sick," he replied, forcing a smile. "I'm just a little worried about work. Do you want me to draw flowers for you after dinner?" "It always helps when you're worried." The girl's innocent offer touched Benedict deeply. "I would like that, my little one." Mrs. Dubois, who was watching the interaction in silence, waited for Iris to brush her teeth before speaking. "Mr. Vance," she said in a low voice, "I don't know exactly what's happening, but I see that you're being pressured. If you think it would be better for Iris to stay away from you for a while—" "Never," he said firmly. "They can destroy my business, they can ruin my reputation, but they won't separate me from her, even if it means losing everything. Mrs. Dubois, before I met Iris, I had already lost everything that really mattered. Money and power are things that can be regained, but a family like this," he pointed to where Iris was brushing her teeth, humming softly, "that's priceless." The next morning, Constance Almeida arrived punctually at 9 o'clock. She was a serious, middle-aged woman with a penetrating gaze that immediately catalogued every detail around her. Iris hid behind Benedict when she saw her, sensing that it wasn't a social visit. "Ms. Almeida," Benedict said, trying to maintain cordiality. "Welcome. Would you like something to drink?" "No, thank you. I prefer to get straight to the point." She opened a folder and consulted some papers. "I need to talk to Iris alone first. She's very shy with strangers," Benedict said. "Can I be present? Mr. Vance, if you really have the best intentions for this child, you shouldn't have a problem with a supervised conversation." Reluctantly, Benedict agreed, but Iris clung to his leg, clearly frightened. "I don't want to talk to the lady," she said, her voice trembling. "I want to stay with my Mr. Vance." "Iris," Constance said in a tone that tried to be gentle but sounded forced, "you don't need to be afraid. I just want to ask you some questions to see if you're happy here." "I'm very happy," Iris replied quickly, "happier than I've ever been in my whole life." "And why are you happy?" "Because I have a family now. Mr. Vance and Mrs. Dubois take care of me, give me good food, let me draw flowers, and never yell at me." "You draw a lot of flowers, don't you?" "Why?" Iris thought for a moment. "Because my mom liked flowers, and because when I draw flowers, people get less sad." "And does Mr. Vance get sad sometimes?" "He used to be very sad when I met him. He cried at the cemetery because his little son went to live in heaven, but now he smiles more." Constance took careful notes. "Iris, has anyone ever told you to say nice things about Mr. Vance? Or promised you anything if you said you were happy here?" The question confused the girl. "What do you mean? Did anyone teach you what you should say to me today?" "No," Iris said, genuinely perplexed. "I just told the truth. Is it wrong to tell the truth?" "No, dear. It's never wrong to tell the truth." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Constance asking questions about Iris's routine, her feelings, her fears. With each of the girl's answers, it became clearer that she was genuinely happy and well cared for. When Benedict returned to the room, Constance was making final notes. "Mr. Vance," she said, "I need to inspect the whole house, check the living conditions." During the inspection, which lasted another hour, Constance examined Iris's room, the kitchen, the bathrooms, even the pantry. Everything was impeccable, clearly maintained with care and affection. "Mr. Vance," she said finally, "I must admit that I have found no evidence of neglect or exploitation. The child is visibly well cared for, happy and healthy. So I will recommend that she remain in your care, but I need to warn you. I will continue to make periodic visits, and if I receive any new complaints, I will have to investigate again." After Constance left, Iris ran to the garden and began to draw frantically on the ground with a twig. When Benedict approached, he saw that she was making flowers around a human figure. "What are you drawing?" he asked. "Protection flowers," she said seriously, "to protect our family from the bad people who want to separate us." "How do you know there are bad people trying to separate us?" "Because I've been through it before," she said with a wisdom that broke Benedict's heart. "Before I met you, people always showed up asking questions and then took me to places where I didn't want to stay. But this time it's different," he promised. "I know," she said, continuing to draw, "because this time you're fighting to keep me. The other people never fought." That afternoon, Valerie arrived with worrying news. "I got some information through contacts at the courthouse," she said. "Albert is moving heaven and earth to get temporary custody of Iris." "Can he do that?" "As the brother of the person who currently cares for her, he can technically claim family interest. And with all the money and influence behind him, I won't let that happen," Benedict said with iron determination. "Benedict, maybe it's time to consider more drastic measures." "Like what?" "Running away," she said simply. "Take Iris and Mrs. Dubois and leave here, to another state where these men have no influence." The suggestion hung in the air between them. Abandon everything he had built, start from scratch somewhere else, like a fugitive. It was a terrifying prospect, but maybe it was the only way to protect Iris. "I need to think," he said. "We don't have much time," Valerie warned. "The papers for the change of custody can be processed quickly with the right influences." That night, Benedict stayed awake, watching Iris sleep peacefully. She was holding a drawing of flowers that she had made before going to sleep, as if it were a protective talisman. The innocence of that serene sleep contrasted brutally with the storm that was brewing around them. He had made his decision. If it was necessary to lose everything to protect that child, he would lose it. If it was necessary to flee to keep her safe, he would flee. Because for the first time in years, he had something that was worth more than any other material possession. He had a daughter to protect. Benedict's decision to consider fleeing was shaken by an unexpected event the next morning. Iris woke up earlier than usual, and instead of going to the garden to draw as she always did, she sat on the bed and began to cry silently. When Benedict heard the sobs coming from her room, he ran to see what was happening. "Iris, my little one, what's wrong?" he asked, sitting on the edge of the bed and pulling her into a hug. "I dreamed about my mom again," she said through tears. "But this time she was sad at me." "Why would she be sad at you?" "Because in the dream she said I forgot about her, that now I have a new family, and I don't think about her less." Benedict's heart squeezed. During all these months caring for Iris, he had focused so much on giving her a new life that perhaps he hadn't paid enough attention to the girl's need to process the loss of her mother. "Iris, you haven't forgotten your mother," he said gently. "And having a new family doesn't mean you love your mother any less. The heart has room for a lot of love." "But I don't even know where she is," Iris sobbed. "What if she's alone and sad like I was when I lived on the street?" At that moment, Benedict made a decision that would change everything. "Iris, what if I told you that we can find out where your mother is?" The girl's eyes widened. "Can you really?" "I can try, but I need you to understand that your mother may still be very sick. Maybe she won't remember you or won't be able to recognize you." "It doesn't matter," Iris said determinedly. "I just want to know if she's okay, and I want her to know that I haven't forgotten her." That morning, Benedict called all the contacts he had in the healthcare field. Finding Celeste's whereabouts wasn't difficult. She had been admitted to the state psychiatric hospital in Albany for over a year, diagnosed with a severe case of schizophrenia. "The patient's situation is complicated," explained Dr. Robert Newman, the psychiatrist responsible for the case, during a call. "She presents episodes of disconnection from reality, hallucinations, and prolonged periods of catatonia. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources for more specialized treatment, and the prognosis in public institutions with our limited resources, guarded, She could benefit from more modern therapies, state-of-the-art medications, intensive monitoring, but that would cost a fortune. Doctor, Benedict said, what if money wasn't an issue? There was a pause on the other end of the line. If there really were unlimited resources. Well, there are specialized clinics, experimental treatments, there's always hope. But we're talking about costs that could reach hundreds of thousands of dollars. I want you to provide the best treatment available for her, Benedict said without hesitation. No matter the cost. Mr. Vance, I need to be honest. Even with the best treatment, there's no guarantee of a full recovery. Schizophrenia is a complex disease. Doctor, that woman is the mother of the most important child in my life. If there's a chance, however small, I want her to have access to that chance. When he told Iris about the conversation with the doctor, she hugged him so hard that she almost knocked him over. Are you going to help my mum get better? She asked, her eyes shining with hope. I'm going to do everything in my power, he promised. But why? You don't even know her that well. Benedict thought carefully about the answer. Because you love her, and everything you love is important to me too. That afternoon, Valerie arrived at Benedict's house with a worried expression. I need to tell you something, she said. Albert has accelerated the process to get custody of Iris. He got a judge who is sympathetic to the cause and is claiming that you are financially unstable due to the problems at the company. Financially unstable? He presented documents showing the loss of contracts, the problems with suppliers, the decrease in revenue. He's arguing that you don't have the means to support a child adequately. That's ridiculous. Even with the losses, I still have more than enough resources. I know that, and you know that. But on paper, with the numbers he's presenting, it may seem convincing. How much time do we have? A few days, maybe a week. At that moment, Mrs. Dubois entered the room, bringing coffee for the two of them. She had heard part of the conversation, and her face was somber. Mr. Vance, she said, sitting down with difficulty in an armchair, there's something I need to confess. What is it, Mrs. Dubois? Albert approached me yesterday. He offered me money to testify against you, to say that Iris is not being well cared for here. Benedict felt his blood run cold. And what did you answer? I told him to get lost, she said with dignity. But Mr. Vance, if they're willing to bribe witnesses, there's no limit to what they can do. Mrs. Dubois, you could have accepted the money. I know you need resources. Mr. Vance, she interrupted, her eyes flashing with indignation. I may be poor, I may be old, I may not have a place to live, but I'm not for sale. Iris is like a granddaughter to me, and you gave me back my dignity. There's no money in the world that will make me betray you. Valerie watched the scene with growing admiration. Mrs. Dubois, can I use your testimony in the process? The fact that they tried to bribe a witness is a crime. You can use anything you want, the old woman said. And I can prove it. I recorded the conversation on my cell phone. In the following days, the situation intensified dramatically. The private clinic where Celeste had been transferred confirmed that she was responding well to the new treatment. But the process would be long. Meanwhile, the legal pressure against Benedict increased. On Thursday, he received an official visit from a bailiff with a subpoena. A hearing had been scheduled for the following Monday to decide on Iris's custody. This is very fast, Valerie said, examining the documents. Normally, this type of process takes weeks to be scheduled. They're buying speed, Benedict said bitterly. That night, after Iris went to sleep, Benedict and Valerie stayed up late, planning the defense. We have some points in our favor, she said, making notes. Mrs. Dubois' testimony about the attempted bribery, the medical reports showing that Iris is healthy and well cared for, the psychological assessment confirming that she is emotionally stable. But they have political influence, financial resources to hire the best lawyers, and above all, they have Albert as a blood relative claiming family interest. And if we lose? Valerie was silent for a long moment. If we lose, Iris will live with Albert temporarily while the case is re-evaluated. And knowing him, I know he's not doing this out of love for the child. Then we can't lose. Benedict, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Are you prepared to do anything to keep Iris? Anything legal, yes. And if legal isn't enough? Benedict looked out the window at the garden where Iris played every day, where she drew her flowers of hope, where she had found the first real peace in years. Then we'll do what is necessary, he said finally. Iris has suffered too much in her life. I'm not going to let her suffer anymore. In the next room, Iris was awake, listening to snippets of the conversation through the thin wall. At 4 years old, she didn't fully understand the legal implications, but she understood enough to know that bad people wanted to separate her from her new family. Silently, she got out of bed and picked up her crayons. On the floor of her room, she began to draw the largest flower garden she had ever made, each one representing a prayer that she could stay with the people who loved her. She didn't know that, in the hospital room in Albany, her mother Celeste had just had her first lucid day in over a year, and that the first thing she said to the nurse was, "Where is my daughter? I need to find my Iris." The weekend before the hearing passed as a blur of desperate preparations and stolen moments of normalcy. Benedict tried to maintain the usual routine so as not to alarm Iris, but the girl, with her heightened sensitivity, perceived the tension that hung over the house like a storm cloud. On Saturday morning, Dr. Robert Newman called with news that changed everything. "Mr. Vance," he said, barely able to contain the excitement in his voice, "I need to tell you about Celeste Santos. She has had a surprising improvement in the last 2 days. She is lucid, coherent, and is constantly asking about her daughter." Benedict felt his heart race. "Does this mean she can—" "It means she wants to see Iris, and from a medical point of view I believe it would be beneficial for both of them. But Mr. Vance, I need to warn you. Celeste is still fragile. A relapse is always possible. Can I take her today?" "You can, but I recommend a short, supervised visit in a controlled environment." When Benedict told Iris that they were going to visit her mother, the girl's reaction was a mixture of explosive joy and deep nervousness. "Will she recognize me?" Iris asked, clinging to Benedict's hand as they headed to the car. "I don't know, my little one." "But if she doesn't recognize you now, it doesn't mean she won't recognize you later. What if she doesn't like me anymore? I've changed a lot since she left." "Iris," Benedict said, kneeling down to be at her level. "You're her daughter. Mothers never stop loving their children, even when they're sick." The trip to Albany took 2 hours, during which Iris oscillated between moments of excitement and periods of thoughtful silence. Valerie had insisted on accompanying them, both for emotional support and as a witness to the meeting. The psychiatric hospital was a white and austere building that tried to mask its function with well-kept gardens and soft colors on the walls. Iris held Benedict's hand tighter as they entered the lobby. "It looks like a normal hospital," she said softly. "It's a hospital for people who get sick in their minds," Benedict explained. "Like you got sick in your throat once, remember? Only it's different." Dr. Newman greeted them personally and led them through clean corridors to a small but welcoming visitors' room with comfortable sofas and large windows overlooking an inner garden. "Celeste is waiting for you," he said. "But remember, if she starts to get agitated or confused, we'll need to interrupt the visit." When the door opened and Celeste entered accompanied by a nurse, Iris froze. The woman who entered was a pale and thin version of the mother she remembered, with shorter hair and eyes that seemed to have seen too much. But when Celeste saw Iris, her face transformed completely. "My girl," Celeste whispered, tears streaming down her face. "My Iris, how you've grown." Iris ran into her mother's arms, and the encounter between the two was so intense that everyone present was moved. Mother and daughter hugged as if they wanted to make up for all the lost time in a single moment. "Mommy, I thought you had died," Iris sobbed. Everyone said you had gone away forever. I was very sick, my flower, Celeste said, stroking her daughter's hair. My head was very confused and I couldn't think straight, but I never stopped loving you. I never stopped loving you either, Iris said. And look, Mummy, I have a new family that takes care of me. This is Mr. Vance. He is very good to me. Celeste looked at Benedict with a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. You're the man who's taking care of my daughter? I am, Benedict replied, and I can say that she is the most special child I have ever known. She was always special, Celeste said, turning to look at Iris again. Even small, she always took care of everyone. Tell Mommy, are you happy? I'm very happy, Iris said excitedly. Mr. Vance lets me draw flowers every day, and Mrs. Dubois teaches me how to cook, and I have my own room with a warm bed. And do you eat well? Are you not cold? I eat very well. Yesterday we had chocolate cake that I helped make myself. During the next hour, mother and daughter talked about everything. Iris's drawings, her games, her fears and joys. Celeste listened to every word with absolute attention, as if she wanted to record everything in her memory. Iris, Celeste said eventually, Mommy needs to tell you something important. I'm still sick. I'm getting better, but I still need to stay here in the hospital for a while. For how long? I don't know yet. It could be a long time. But are you going to get really better? The doctors think so, but it will be slow. Iris was quiet for a moment, processing the information. Mommy, while you get better, can I continue living with Mr. Vance? Celeste looked at Benedict, who approached. Celeste, he said gently, I want you to know that Iris will always have a home with me for as long as necessary. And when you are completely recovered, if you want to take her back— No, Celeste interrupted, surprising everyone. I mean, not now. Mr. Vance, I can see in my daughter's eyes that she is truly happy for the first time since I got sick. She has a stability that I cannot offer now, maybe not for a long time. Mommy, don't you want to live with me anymore? Iris asked, her eyes filling with tears. My dear, Celeste said, hugging her daughter, I want your happiness above all else. And if your happiness is with Mr. Vance, then that's where you should stay. But that doesn't mean we won't love each other anymore. It means that sometimes loving someone is leaving that person in the place where she is happiest. On the way home, Iris was unusually quiet. When Benedict asked if she was sad, she shook her head. I'm not sad, she said. What do you say when you feel many things at the same time? Confused, Valerie suggested. No, not confused. It's full, Iris said, touching her chest. My heart is full. Of joy because I saw my mom, of sadness because she's still sick, of gratitude because I have you, of hope because she said she's going to get better. The emotional wisdom of the 4-year-old impressed the two adults. You know what that means? Benedict said. It means you have a big heart, capable of feeling many good things at the same time. On Monday morning, the day of the hearing, Benedict woke up with renewed determination. The visit to Celeste had changed something fundamental. Now he wasn't just fighting to keep Iris with him. He was fighting to honor the wish of a mother who wanted the best for her daughter. Mr. Vance, Iris said during breakfast, today is the day you go to court. It is. Can I go with you? No, my little one. Courthouses aren't places for children. But it's about me, isn't it? Benedict hesitated. It is. Then can I draw flowers for you to take? For when you get nervous. Iris ran to her room and returned with a drawing she had made during the night. A family of multicolored flowers, all holding hands, with a large, smiling sun shining over them. This is for you to have strength, she said, handing him the paper. And this, she took another drawing out of her pocket, is for the judge, so he can see that I draw happy flowers when I'm in a happy family. Benedict put the 2 drawings in his suit pocket, close to his heart. He didn't yet know how the day would end, but he knew that he would fight with all his strength to protect the girl who had become his daughter in his heart. "Iris," he said, hugging her, "no matter what happens today, I want you to know that you have changed my life for the better. You taught me to love again. And you taught me that families aren't just blood," she replied. "They're from the heart, too." As he headed to the courthouse, Benedict touched the drawings in his pocket and felt a strength he didn't know he possessed. The final battle was about to begin. The courthouse was packed on a Monday morning. Benedict arrived accompanied by Valerie, who carried a voluminous folder with all the documents they had gathered for his defense. Across the room, Albert was sitting with two expensive lawyers and some of the businessmen who had made the threats weeks before. Their presence made it clear that this went far beyond a simple family dispute. The judge responsible for the case was Dr. Henry Monroe, a 60-year-old man known for his severity but also for his impartiality. When everyone was seated, he opened the session with his grave voice echoing through the room. "We are here to decide on the temporary custody of the minor Iris Santos, 4 years of age," announced the judge. "The petitioner, Mr. Albert Vance, alleges that the current guardian of the child is not in adequate condition for her care." Albert's lawyer, Dr. Miller, stood up first. He was an elegant man with eloquent speech, clearly expensive. "Your Honor," he began, "my client comes to present disturbing facts about the situation of the minor. Mr. Benedict Vance, although well-intentioned, is experiencing serious financial difficulties that compromise his ability to adequately provide for the child." Dr. Miller presented a series of documents showing the contractual losses of Benedict's company, the decrease in revenue, and even photographs of the demonstrations of employees from other companies demanding wage improvements. "As you can see," continued the lawyer, "Mr. Benedict's irresponsible behavior is causing economic instability throughout the region. Can a man who makes such reckless decisions in business be trusted to make decisions about the well-being of a child?" Albert was called to testify. With an expression that tried to convey family concern, he took the witness stand. "Your Honor," said Albert, "I love my brother, but he has changed drastically in recent months. He has become impulsive, making decisions based on emotion rather than reason. I fear that this emotional instability may negatively affect an already traumatized child." "What kind of impulsive decisions?" asked the judge. "Increasing employee wages without financial planning, improving working conditions without considering the impact on costs, and mainly accepting responsibility for a child without following proper legal procedures." "And what would be your proposal for the situation of the minor?" "I offer a stable home with guaranteed financial resources and adequate family supervision. The child would have access to the best medical care, private education, and mainly the stability that my brother, unfortunately, can no longer offer." When it was the defense's turn, Valerie stood up with determination. She had spent years defending corporate cases, but had never fought for something as important as this. "Your Honor," she said, "the prosecution tries to paint a picture of financial instability, but the facts show something very different. Mr. Benedict Vance remains one of the most prosperous businessmen in the region, with more than enough resources to support a child adequately." She presented bank statements, asset reports, and recent contracts, including the agreement with Edward Rivers Company. "More important than the financial situation," Valerie continued, "are the medical and psychological reports that show that Iris is thriving under Mr. Benedict's care. The child has gained weight, overcome trauma, developed confidence, and for the first time in her life demonstrates emotional stability." Mrs. Dubois was called as a witness. The elderly woman took the stand with dignity, leaning on her makeshift cane. "Mrs. Dubois," said Valerie, "you live daily with Iris and Mr. Benedict. Can you tell us about the child's routine?" "Iris wakes up happy every morning," said Mrs. Dubois in a firm voice. She has breakfast with us, plays in the garden, draws her flowers, helps me in the kitchen. She is a healthy, cheerful, well-cared-for child. And what about Mr. Benedict's behavior with her? He's a dedicated father, patient, caring, always worried about her well-being. I've never seen a man transform so much for love of a child. Albert's lawyer rose for cross-examination. Mrs. Dubois, is it true that Mr. Benedict's brother offered you money to testify against him? Mrs. Dubois straightened her shoulders. It's true. And why didn't you accept? Because I'm not for sale, she said with absolute dignity, and because I don't lie about people I love. Did you record this conversation? I did, confirmed Mrs. Dubois, causing a stir in the room. When it was Benedict's turn to testify, he took the witness stand with Iris's drawings in his pocket. He felt the weight of the gaze of everyone present, especially the businessman who had tried to blackmail him. Mr. Vance, said Valerie, can you explain how Iris came into your life? Benedict told the whole story, the encounter in the cemetery, the girl's compassion, how she had changed his perspective on life. His voice choked when he described the first hug he had received from her, the first time she had called him her Mr. Vance. Why did you decide to change the working conditions in your company? Asked Valerie. Because Iris taught me that all people deserve dignity, he replied. She showed me that true wealth is not in the money one accumulates, but in the good one does for others. And if maintaining these changes means losing contracts and money, then I will lose them, but I won't lose my humanity again. During cross-examination, Dr. Miller was relentless. Mr. Vance, don't you think it's irresponsible to make decisions that affect hundreds of employees based on the opinions of a 4-year-old child? I didn't base my decisions on her opinions, Benedict replied calmly. I based them on the example of compassion she gave me, an example that is costing millions of dollars to the local economy. An example that is restoring dignity to exploited workers. And if your stubbornness results in unemployment for those same workers, then we will find other solutions, but we won't go back to exploiting vulnerable people. The tensest moment came when the judge asked, Mr. Vance, what would you say if I determined that the child should stay with your brother? Benedict touched the drawings in his pocket and took a deep breath. Your Honor, I would say that I hope Iris is happy wherever she is, but I would also say that I have known my brother for 48 years, and I know that he is not doing this out of love for the child. What is he doing it for, then? To control me, to force me to return to the old methods of exploitation that enriched some at the expense of many. Albert stood up abruptly. That's a lie. Mr. Vance, sit down, the judge ordered sternly. Your Honor, continued Benedict, I may not have much more to offer in material terms if I continue to lose contracts, but I have unconditional love to give Iris. I have the determination to raise her with solid values, to teach her that doing good is more important than accumulating wealth. What if the financial situation gets worse? Then we will work together to overcome it. Iris has taught me that people who love each other face difficulties together. When all the testimonies were over, the judge announced a recess for deliberation. Valerie held Benedict's hand as they waited in the hallway. We did everything we could, she said. What if it's not enough? Then we will fight by other means, she replied with determination. An hour later, everyone was called back to the room. Judge Monroe had a serious expression when he began to read his decision. After analyzing all the testimonies and evidence presented, he said, I determined that... The silence in the room was absolute. Benedict held Iris's drawings tighter, preparing himself for any outcome. He knew that regardless of the decision, his life would never be the same. But he also knew that Iris had taught him something that no one could take away from him. How to love unconditionally and how to fight for what he believed in. After analyzing all the testimonies and evidence presented, continued Judge Monroe, I determined that temporary custody of the minor Iris Santos will remain with Mr. Benedict Vance. The relief that took over Benedict was so intense that he needed to lean on the table in front of him. Valerie squeezed his hand tightly, both struggling to hold back tears of happiness. Across the room, Albert and his lawyers seemed shocked by the decision. However, continued the judge, raising his hand to silence the murmurs in the room, this decision comes with strict conditions. Mr. Benedict will be subjected to monthly evaluations by social workers, and any significant change in his financial or emotional situation will be cause for immediate review of custody. I understand, Your Honor, said Benedict, still processing the victory. In addition, added the judge, I determined that the child maintains supervised contact with her uncle to preserve family ties. Albert stood up once more. Your Honor, I would like to record that I will appeal this decision. It is your right, the judge replied dryly. But until there is a new determination, my decision remains valid. When the session was adjourned, Benedict left the courtroom under the hostile gaze of the businessmen present. Charles Matthews approached him in the parking lot, accompanied by George Castle and Ralph Pierce. Congratulations, Benedict, said Charles with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You won a battle, but the war is far from over. The war should have ended a long time ago, Benedict replied. You are fighting against basic humanity. We are fighting to maintain an order that has worked for decades, said George, and you will see what kind of consequences your stubbornness will bring. During the drive back home, Valerie was euphoric, but Benedict remained thoughtful. Why aren't you celebrating? She asked. We won. We won a battle, he corrected. But I heard the threats. They won't stop here. Benedict, today we proved that doing the right thing pays off. Iris stays with you, and that's what matters. When they arrived at the house, they found Iris waiting at the gate, accompanied by Mrs. Dubois. The girl had spent the day making drawings to bring luck to Benedict in court. So? Asked Iris, running to hug him. Did the judge let me stay with you? He did, said Benedict, picking her up and spinning her in the air. You're going to continue to be my girl. Forever. Forever, he promised, although he knew that nothing in life was really forever. In the following days, life tried to return to normal, but Benedict noticed subtle changes. Suppliers who had always been punctual began to delay deliveries. Employees commented that their families were being approached by people offering better jobs in competing companies. The pressure was constant, but subtle. It was on a Thursday night that everything changed dramatically. Benedict was helping Iris with a puzzle when his phone rang. It was Dr. Robert Newman from the clinic where Celeste was admitted. Mr. Vance, said the doctor, his voice filled with urgency. I need to communicate some news about Celeste Santos. What happened? Did she have a relapse? No, on the contrary. She has had an extraordinary improvement. She has been completely lucid for a week, responding exceptionally well to treatment, and she wants to see Iris again. When? She asked that it be as soon as possible. She says she has something very important to tell her daughter. The following Saturday, Benedict, Iris and Valerie again made the trip to Albany. This time, Iris was less nervous, more eager to see how her mother was progressing. When they arrived at the clinic, they found a completely transformed Celeste. She had gained weight, her hair was carefully combed, and mainly her eyes shone with a clarity they didn't have on the previous visit. "My flower!" exclaimed Celeste when she saw Iris, opening her arms. "How I missed you!" "Mommy, you're different," observed Iris, hugging her. "You're more like I remembered." "I'm getting really better," said Celeste. "The doctors say that in a few weeks I may be discharged from the clinic. Does that mean you can come live with us?" asked Iris excitedly. Celeste looked at Benedict with an expression that mixed gratitude and something he couldn't identify. "Iris, my dear," said Celeste, "Mommy needs to talk to you about something very important. Do you remember when you were very little, before I got sick?" "I remember a little. We lived in a small house and you worked a lot." "That's right. And do you remember why I worked so hard? Iris frowned, focusing on the fragmented memories. To buy food for us both. Also, but mainly because I was trying to save money to look for someone very important. Who? Celeste took a deep breath, as if preparing for a difficult revelation. Your daddy, Iris. I was trying to find your father. The silence that followed was charged with emotion. Iris looked at Celeste with wide eyes. I have a real daddy, not just your Benedict who takes care of me. You have, confirmed Celeste, and my dear, I finally managed to find him. Benedict felt like the floor had disappeared beneath him. Celeste, what are you saying? I managed to contact Mark Rivers. He lives in New York City now, married with other children. When I told him about Iris, he was shocked. He never knew he had a daughter. And what did he say? Valerie asked. That he wants to meet her. That he wants to be a part of her life. Celeste looked directly at Benedict. Mr. Vance, Mark is a good man, with stable financial resources, a structured family. He can offer Iris things that... No. Iris interrupted suddenly, her voice small but determined. I don't want to leave. I want to stay with my Ben. My flower, Celeste said gently. You don't even know your father yet. Maybe when you meet him. It doesn't matter, Iris said, starting to cry. My Ben is my father now. He found me when I was lost. He took care of me when I was sad. He loves me the way I am. Benedict knelt next to Iris, feeling his heart break. Iris, my little one, your mother is right. Your real father can give you things that I might not be able to. But I don't want things, Iris sobbed. I want to stay with my family, with you, with Mrs. Dubois, with Aunt Valerie. Celeste approached her daughter. Iris, listen to me. Mark doesn't want to take you away forever. He just wants to meet you, to be a part of your life. You can have two families who love you. How so? Like you have two mothers now, me and Mrs. Dubois, who takes care of you like a grandmother. You can have two fathers too, Mr. Vance, who found you and took care of you, and Mark, who is your biological father. Dr. Newman, who had remained silent observing the scene, spoke up. Perhaps a supervised meeting would be a good idea, he suggested, so that Iris can meet her biological father without the pressure of making immediate decisions. When would this meeting be? Benedict asked, though each word cost him an immense effort. Mark can come next week, Celeste said. He has already cancelled work commitments to meet his daughter. During the drive back, Iris was unusually quiet. When Benedict asked what she was thinking, she responded with a question that surprised him. Ben, if I meet my real dad and like him, will you be sad with me? I would never be sad with you for loving someone, he replied, though he felt like he was being torn apart inside. And if he wants me to live with him? Benedict hesitated before answering. Then we'll talk about what's best for you. But I already know what's best for me, Iris said with conviction. It's staying where I'm loved the way I am. And that place is with you. That night, after Iris fell asleep, Benedict stayed awake looking out her bedroom window. Valerie found him there, lost in thought. You're afraid of losing her, she said. Terrified, he admitted. What if her biological father is really better for her? What if he can give her a life I can't? Benedict, you saved this girl from a life on the streets. You've turned her into a happy and confident child. No biological father can erase that, but he can offer traditional family stability, siblings, a present mother. And you can offer the unconditional love of someone who chose her, Valerie said. Sometimes that's worth more than any traditional family structure. But deep down, Benedict knew that the next week would bring challenges that could change everything again. And for the first time since the beginning of this whole journey, he wondered if his love would be enough to keep Iris by his side. The week leading up to the meeting with Mark Rivers was one of the most difficult in Benedict's life. Iris alternated between moments of curiosity about her biological father and episodes of anxiety in which she clung to him, as if she feared being taken away at any moment. "Ben," she said one morning, while drawing flowers in the garden, "do you think my real dad will like my drawings?" "I'm sure he will," he replied, watching how carefully she worked on each line. "They're the most beautiful drawings I've ever seen." "What if he doesn't like them? What if he thinks I'm weird because I like to draw flowers for sad people?" "Iris, you're not weird. You're special, and anyone with any sense will realize that." But internally, Benedict was terrified. Mark Rivers had sent a photo through Celeste. He was a young, successful man, married to an elegant woman, and the father of 2 boys. The perfect family that could offer Iris everything a child deserved: stability, siblings, a traditional family structure. On Wednesday, Valerie arrived at the house with a worried expression. "Benedict, I need to tell you something about Mark Rivers," she said, pulling some papers from a folder. "What did you find out?" "I did some discreet investigations. He's really financially successful, works at a tech company in New York City, has a solid reputation." "That should be good," Benedict said, though his voice didn't reflect relief. "It should. But I also found out that his wife, Anna Carolina, isn't very enthusiastic about the idea of having a stepdaughter. According to some sources, she sees Iris as a complication to the family they've already built. And their children? 2 boys, 6 and 8 years old. Well-raised, well-behaved, but apparently they haven't been prepared to have a sister." Benedict sighed deeply. "This complicates things." "Or simplifies them," Valerie said, "because it shows that not every structured family is necessarily the best option for a child." On Saturday, the day of the meeting arrived. Mark had suggested they meet in a public park, a neutral environment where Iris would feel comfortable. When they arrived at the agreed location, Benedict saw a youthful-looking man approaching, accompanied by a blonde woman and 2 boys. "You must be Benedict," Mark said, extending his hand. "I'm Mark Rivers. I can't express my gratitude for everything you've done for Iris." "No need to thank me," Benedict replied. "She's changed my life as much as I've changed hers." Mark knelt down to be at Iris's height, who was hiding behind Benedict's legs. "Hi, Iris," he said softly. "I'm your dad. I know this must be confusing for you, but I want you to know that I'm very happy to meet you." Iris looked at the man with curiosity, then at the woman and the 2 boys who were standing a little away. "You look like me," she said finally, noting that they both had the same brown eyes. "You got your eyes from your dad," Mark said, smiling. "And your hair too. You're beautiful, my daughter." "Is that lady your wife?" Iris asked, pointing to Anna Carolina. "Yes, she is. And those are your brothers, Gabriel and Raphael." Iris looked at the boys with interest, but they seemed more interested in their tablets than in meeting their newfound sister. During the next 2 hours, Mark made a genuine effort to get to know Iris. He asked about her favorite games, her drawings, her routine. Iris responded with her natural politeness, but Benedict could see that she was cautious, assessing. "Iris," Mark said eventually, "Dad would really like you to see our house in New York City. You could spend a few days with us, get to know your brothers better, see what it would be like to have a big family." "But I already have a family," Iris replied, looking at Benedict. "I have my Ben, Mrs. Dubois. Aunt Valerie." "Of course you do," Mark said. "But now you can have 2 families, the family that raised you and your blood family." Anna Carolina approached, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Iris, dear," she said with an artificial sweetness, "in New York City, you would have a beautiful room, full of toys. You could study at the best schools." "I like to draw," Iris said. "Can I draw flowers in your house?" "Flowers?" Anna Carolina looked confused. "Well, maybe we can get you paper and crayons to draw at home, not in the garden." The answer revealed a lot about how Anna Carolina saw the world. To her, drawing was an activity that should be contained, controlled, done within established limits. "I like to draw on the ground," Iris said simply, "with sticks, for people who are sad." "Oh," Anna Carolina said, clearly uncomfortable. Well, that's interesting. Mark noticed the tension and tried to change the subject. Iris, how about you meet your brothers? Gabriel and Raphael reluctantly approached when called. They were well-behaved boys, but there was a coldness in their greetings that Iris noticed immediately. Do you like to draw? She asked, trying to find a connection point. Drawing is for babies, said Gabriel, the older one. We play video games and do sports. And are you going to live in our room? Raphael asked. Because there's no room for your things. I don't need much space, Iris said gently, just a corner to keep my drawings. When the meeting ended, Mark asked to speak with Benedict in private. Benedict, he said, I want to be honest with you. Iris is clearly a special girl, and I see how much she loves you, but she is my biological daughter, and I feel I have responsibilities to her. I understand, Benedict said, though each word was painful. I'd like to take her to New York City for 2 weeks so she can get to know our family, our routine better. Afterward, we can talk about more permanent arrangements. What if she doesn't want to go? Then we'll respect her decision, but I believe it's important for her to know all her options. During the drive back home, Iris was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. Ben, is my real dad a good man? He seems like a good man, Benedict answered honestly. And his family? Benedict hesitated. They're different people from us, with a different way of life. They don't like flowers, Iris said thoughtfully. I saw it in their eyes. Maybe they just don't understand yet why you like to draw flowers so much. You understood right away on the first day, she said. Remember, at the cemetery when I drew flowers for the boy Theo? I remember, Benedict said, feeling his eyes fill with tears. Ben, if I go to New York City to meet my real dad's family, do you promise you'll come get me if I don't like it there? I promise, he said, though he knew he might not have a choice if Mark decided to exercise his parental rights. And do you promise you'll always be my heart dad, even if I have to live with them? Forever, he promised, taking her little hand. That night, Iris had nightmares for the first time in months. She woke up crying, looking for Benedict. I dreamed I was in a big, beautiful house, she sobbed, but I couldn't go out to draw flowers, and no one understood why I was sad. Benedict comforted her until she fell back asleep, but he couldn't close his eyes himself. Through the window he watched the garden where Iris had drawn hundreds of flowers during the months they had lived together, each one representing a moment of joy, a gesture of love, a demonstration of her generous soul. On Monday, Mark called to confirm the details of the trip to New York City. Iris would spend 2 weeks with him and his family, getting to know the life she could have as the biological daughter of a successful man. She'll be okay, Valerie said, trying to console Benedict. And if she's not, you'll fight to bring her back. What if she likes it there? What if she decides she'd rather have siblings, a present mother, all the opportunities that a structured family can offer? Then you'll have to accept it, Valerie said softly, because loving someone sometimes means letting that person go where they'll be happier. But as he watched Iris play in the garden, drawing flowers with her sticks, Benedict wondered if he would have the strength to keep that promise, if the time came to let her go. The farewell at the airport was harder than Benedict had imagined. Iris held his hand tightly, a small backpack with her few belongings on her shoulder, and an envelope with some of her favorite drawings pressed against her chest. Ben, she said, looking up with her big eyes, do you promise you'll be here when I get back? I promise, he said, kneeling down to be at her height. And I promise I'll think about you every day. I'll think about you every day, too. And Mrs. Dubois and Aunt Valerie. Iris hesitated for a moment. And I'll draw flowers for them, too, even when I'm far away. Mark approached, carrying Anna, Carolina, and the 2 boys a few steps behind. Iris, it's time to go. The plane can't wait. I'm coming, Dad Mark, she said, using for the first time the term she had invented to differentiate him from Benedict. She hugged Benedict with all the strength of her small arms. I love you, Dad, Benedict, she whispered in his ear. also using for the first time a word that made his heart almost stop with emotion. "I love you too, my little flower," he replied, struggling not to cry in front of her. As Iris walked away with Mark, she turned around several times to wave until she disappeared into the crowd at the airport. Benedict stood in the same place for long minutes, feeling like a part of himself had been torn away. The first days without Iris were the quietest the house had known since she had arrived. Dorothea tried to maintain the normal routine, but it was impossible to ignore the absence of the girl who had become the center of their lives. "The house is very quiet," Dorothea commented on the third morning, serving coffee for only 2 people instead of 3. "Very," Benedict agreed, looking automatically at the chair where Iris always sat. "Do you think she's okay there?" "I hope so," he said, though a constant worry gnawed at his chest. On the 4th day, Mark called to give an update. "Iris is adapting well," he said, but there was something in his voice that didn't sound completely convincing. "The boys are starting to get used to her, and Anna Carolina is making an effort to include her in family activities. And how is she feeling?" "A little quiet, maybe. But that's normal, right? Change of environment, new people. Is she drawing?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Well, Anna Carolina bought art supplies for her. Paper, crayons, markers. She has everything in a room just for that." "But is she drawing?" Yes, she draws a lot." Something in Mark's tone made Benedict uneasy, but he didn't want to push it. On the 7th day, it was Iris who called. "Dad, Benedict." Her voice sounded through the phone like music to Benedict's ears. "How are you and Mrs. Dubois?" "We're fine, my little one. Missing you, but fine. And you? Are you liking New York City?" It's different," she said carefully. "There are a lot of tall buildings and cars and noise." "And your brothers? Are they being nice to you?" "They're polite," Iris said, choosing her words. "Gabriel lent me some games, and Raphael showed me his room." "And are you drawing your flowers?" "I am, but—" She hesitated. "Dad Mark, can I talk to Dad Benedict alone?" Benedict heard voices in the background. Then Mark spoke. "Sure, honey. I'll give you some privacy." When they were alone on the line, Iris lowered her voice. "Dad Benedict, can I tell you a secret?" "You always can. I don't like drawing only on paper. It's too small, and the flowers get trapped. I asked if I could draw in the backyard, but Anna Carolina said it would mess up the grass." Benedict's heart squeezed. "And what did you do?" "I drew secretly in a corner of the backyard, with a stick I found. But when Anna Carolina saw, she got angry and said I was destroying the landscaping." "Oh, my little one." "Dad Benedict, people here don't understand why I draw flowers. They think it's just a game, but you know it's not, right?" "I know, Iris. Your flowers are gestures of love, of care, of hope." "That's it. Exactly that." Her voice perked up. "But nobody here understands." "And when I tried to explain, Anna Carolina said I was being dramatic." Benedict clenched his fist, feeling anger rising in his chest. "Iris, do you want to come home?" I don't know if I can ask that," she said, her voice getting small. "Dad Mark is trying to be good to me, and everyone says that here I have better opportunities." "Iris, listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you. Opportunities are useless if you're not happy. And you have the right to choose where you want to live." "Really? Really? You're a very special girl, very wise for your age. If you're not happy there, you can come home." "But what if Dad Mark doesn't let me?" "Then I'll come get you," Benedict promised. "No matter what happens, I'll come get you." In the following days, Iris's calls became more frequent and sadder. She told about how she felt different in Mark's family, how her attempts to connect with her brothers were rebuffed, how Anna Carolina treated her with a forced politeness that didn't hide her irritation. "Yesterday I tried to draw a flower for Gabriel because he was sad," she said in one call. "He had fought with a friend at school, but he tore up my drawing and said that flowers don't solve real problems." "And what did you do?" "I cried a little," she admitted. But then I thought about what you taught me, that not everyone understands the language of flowers, but that doesn't mean they're not important. On the 10th day, it was Mark who called, and his voice was tired. Benedict, I need to be honest with you. Iris is a wonderful girl, but she's not adapting well here. What do you mean? She's very different from my other children, very sensitive, very imaginative. Anna Carolina is doing her best, but she thinks Iris needs more structure, more discipline. Discipline for what? For these fantasies about drawing magic flowers, for this obsession with comforting sad people. Anna Carolina thinks it's not normal behavior for a child. Benedict felt the anger explode. Mark, that obsession is compassion. That fantasy is a pure way to show love. If your wife can't see that, the problem isn't with Iris. I know, Mark said, sighing. And I see that she's special. But our family dynamic, I don't know if we can give her what she needs. Then give me back my daughter, Benedict said, the words coming out with more force than he intended. Your daughter? Yes, my daughter. Because that's what she is. Not biologically, but in every sense that really matters. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mark, Benedict continued, you can offer Iris many material things that I can't. But I can offer her something that your family can't. Complete acceptance of who she is. Unconditional love for her sensitivity, admiration for her compassion, encouragement to express her heart through those flowers that your wife considers destruction of the landscaping. Benedict, she doesn't need to be molded or disciplined. She needs to be loved exactly as she is, and if you can't do that, then she doesn't belong there. On the 11th day, Iris called crying. Dad, Benedict, I want to go home, she sobbed. I want to go home now. What happened, my little one? Anna Carolina. She said that if I'm going to live here, I need to stop this nonsense of drawing flowers for everyone. She said that people are going to think I'm weird. And what did you answer? That I can't stop drawing flowers because that's how my heart speaks. And she said that then my heart needs to learn to speak normally. Benedict closed his eyes, feeling a deep pain for that child who was being forced to repress her most beautiful nature. Iris, listen well. Your heart is perfect the way it is, and tomorrow I'm coming to get you. Really? Really? Pack your things. Dad, Benedict is coming to get you. That night, Benedict packed his bags for the first time in months. He knew he was about to face a complex legal battle, but he didn't care. Iris had asked to come home, and he would move heaven and earth to bring her back. You're doing the right thing, Valerie said, who had arrived to support him. That girl needs to be where she's understood and loved for who she is. And if Mark doesn't let me, then we'll fight in court. We have the recordings of the calls, Iris's own testimony about how she feels there. No sensible judge will force a child to stay in a place where she's not happy. The next morning, Benedict was at the airport, on his way to New York City. He didn't know exactly how he would convince Mark to let Iris come back, but he knew one thing. He wouldn't go home without his heart daughter. The confrontation with Mark took place in the elegant living room of his house in New York City, with Iris waiting anxiously in the room that had been prepared for her. When Benedict arrived, he found a visibly tense family, with Anna Carolina with her arms crossed and the boys holed up in their rooms. Benedict, Mark said, opening the door, I wasn't expecting you to come in person. When my daughter calls me crying, asking to come home, I come in person, Benedict replied, entering the house without ceremony. Your daughter? Anna Carolina spoke for the first time, her voice full of irritation. Mark, are you going to allow this man to come here and talk about your daughter as if she were his? Anna Carolina, please, Mark said, clearly uncomfortable. No, Mark, enough is enough. This girl arrived here with these strange quirks, this unhealthy obsession with drawing on the floor, this constant need to fix people she doesn't even know. And now this man comes here and says she's his daughter. Benedict turned to Anna Carolina, keeping his voice calm but firm. Ma'am, Iris has a natural compassion that leads her to try to comfort sad people. If you consider that a strange quirk, then you're really not the right person to raise such a sensitive child. How dare you judge me? I tried to integrate this girl into our family. I bought her expensive art supplies. I tried to teach her to behave appropriately. Teach her to repress who she is, Benedict corrected. There's a difference. At that moment, Iris appeared on the stairs, carrying her small backpack. Her eyes were red from crying so much, but there was a determination in them that Benedict knew well. "Dad, Benedict!" she shouted, running down the steps and throwing herself into his arms. "I knew you were coming to get me. I'll always come get you," he said, hugging her tightly. "Always." "Iris," Mark said, approaching, "we talked about this. You can stay a few more days, give our family a chance." "I don't want to give more chances," Iris said, still in Benedict's arms. "I want to go home, to my real home." "But Iris," Mark insisted, "here you have brothers, a mother, opportunities." "Dad, Mark," Iris said, turning to him with a wisdom that was impressive. "You're very good, and I like you, but your family doesn't like me the way I am. And I don't want to have to change to please people. Nobody is asking you to change." Anna Carolina asked. Iris said simply. "She said that I need to stop drawing flowers. I need to stop trying to help sad people. I need to be more normal. But Dad Benedict taught me that being kind to people isn't abnormal." Anna Carolina scoffed. "See, Mark, she's completely manipulated by this man." "I'm not manipulated," Iris said, looking directly at Anna Carolina. "I just know the difference between people who love me the way I am and people who want to change me." Mark ran his hand over his face, visibly torn. "Iris, you're my blood daughter. I have responsibilities." "Dad, Mark," Iris interrupted gently. "Having responsibilities isn't the same thing as having love. Dad Benedict had no responsibility to me when he found me in the cemetery, but he loved me anyway." The words of the 4-year-old girl echoed through the room, creating a heavy silence. Benedict was once again impressed by Iris's emotional maturity. "Mark," Benedict said finally, "can I talk to you in private?" The two men went to the office, leaving Iris in the living room with Anna Carolina, who completely ignored her, fiddling with her cell phone. "Mark," Benedict began, "I'll be direct. Iris isn't happy here. You yourself admitted that on the phone." "I know," Mark said, sighing heavily. "But she's my daughter, Benedict, my biological daughter. How can I just give up on her?" "It's not giving up. It's recognizing that sometimes loving someone means leaving that person in the place where they're happiest." "But what about my responsibility as a father?" "Your responsibility as a father is to ensure her happiness, not your possession of her." Mark was silent for a long moment, looking out the window at the impeccable garden where Iris couldn't draw her flowers. "Anna Carolina can't understand Iris," he admitted finally. "And the boys, they see her as an intruder. I thought that with time—" "Some things don't change with time, Mark. Anna Carolina sees Iris as a threat to the perfect family you've built, and Iris will never fit into that mold because she's unique." "What are you suggesting?" Mark asked. "That you let Iris come home with me. I'm not asking you to leave her life. You can visit her, keep in touch, be part of her life, but let her live where she's loved and understood." "And legally?" "We can establish a visitation agreement. You continue to be her biological father, but I continue to be her legal guardian." When they returned to the living room, they found Iris sitting on the floor, drawing with a pencil on a piece of paper. Anna Carolina watched her with disapproval. "Iris, what are you drawing?" Benedict asked. "A flower for Anna Carolina," she said, showing the drawing. "So she won't be angry with me anymore." Anna Carolina looked at the drawing, a simple flower but made with care and affection, and for the first time, her expression softened slightly. "Why do you draw flowers for people who are angry?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Because when people get angry, it's because they're sad inside," Iris explained. And flowers help take away the sadness. And where did you get that idea? My mother taught me before she got sick. She said that when you give something beautiful to someone, that person's heart gets a little lighter. Anna Carolina looked at the drawing in her hands, then at the girl who had tried, even being rejected, to offer her kindness. Iris, she said finally, do you really want to go back to upstate New York? I do, Iris answered honestly. Not because I don't like you, but because there I can be myself without bothering anyone. Mark knelt next to his daughter. Iris, if you go back to upstate New York, can Dad visit you sometimes? Of course, she exclaimed, smiling for the first time since Benedict had arrived. And I can make drawings to send to you too. I would really like that, Mark said, hugging her. 3 hours later, Benedict and Iris were at the airport, waiting for their flight back home. Iris was holding a bag with some gifts that Mark had bought for her, and, more importantly, a letter that he had written. What did your dad write in the letter? Benedict asked. He said that he loves me very much, but that he understands that love sometimes means letting people be happy where they are happiest, Iris said, carefully putting the letter in her backpack. And he said that he will always be my blood dad, even if I live far away. And how do you feel about that? Sad because he will be far away, but happy because I'm coming home, she said honestly. Is it possible to feel both things at the same time? Not only is it possible, but it's a sign that you have a big heart, Benedict said. During the flight, Iris drew on a piece of paper. When Benedict asked what it was, she showed him. A yellow house with a garden full of colorful flowers and 3 figures holding hands in front, her, Benedict, and Dorothea. Our family, she said simply. When they arrived home, it was already night. Dorothea was waiting for them at the door, and the reunion between her and Iris was emotional. The girl ran to hug the elderly lady, as if reuniting with a beloved grandmother. Mrs. Dubois, she cried, I missed you so much, and look, I brought drawings for you. I missed you too, my dear, Dorothea said with tears in her eyes. The house was very empty without you. That night, after Iris fell asleep in her own bed, surrounded by the toys she had left behind and the drawings scattered on the wall, Benedict sat in the garden where it had all begun. Valerie arrived with a bottle of wine to celebrate Iris's return. How was New York City, she asked. Revealing, Benedict said. Mark is a good man, but his family couldn't accept Iris as she is. And Iris, even at just 4 years old, knew how to recognize that. And now, will Mark continue to be in her life? We'll establish a visitation agreement. He can come here, or she can spend vacations with him sometimes. But her home is here. With us. With you, said a small voice. Iris had appeared at the door carrying a blanket. Iris, what are you doing awake? Benedict asked. I couldn't sleep, she said, approaching. Can I stay here with you a little bit? Of course, Benedict said, pulling her into his lap. Iris snuggled against him, looking at the stars. Dad Benedict, she said sleepily, thank you for coming to get me. I'll always come get you, he promised. Always. And thank you for letting me be myself. Thank you for teaching me that being myself is enough, he replied. 6 months later, Benedict received a call that would change their lives once again. It was Dr. Robert Newman from the clinic where Celeste was hospitalized. Mr. Vance, he said, barely able to contain his emotion, I have wonderful news. Celeste Stevens was discharged today. She is completely recovered. When they told Iris, she cried with joy. Is my mom really okay? She asked. Completely okay, Benedict confirmed. And can she come live with us? If she wants to, and if you want, he said. I want it so much, Iris said. Our family is going to get even bigger. A week later, Celeste arrived at the yellow house that Iris loved so much. The reunion between mother and daughter was emotional, but this time without the sadness of imminent separation. Celeste had recovered completely and, more importantly, perfectly understood why her daughter had found a new family. Mr. Vance, she said, hugging the man who had saved her daughter. "I have no words to express my gratitude." "No need to thank me," he said. "Iris saved me as much as I saved her." Can I stay here too?" Celeste asked timidly. "I don't want to separate Iris from the family she chose, but I would like to be part of this family too." "Mom!" Iris shouted. "Of course you can stay. We have plenty of room, and I really want you to meet Mrs. Dubois and Aunt Valérie." And so, the yellow house that had housed an unlikely family of 3 became the official home of 5. Benedict, who had found his humanity. Iris, who had found where she could flourish. Dorothea, who had found a family at the age when she thought she had nothing left. Valerie, who had learned that some values are more important than money, and Celeste, who had recovered not only her sanity, but also her daughter and an entire family that welcomed her with open arms. In the garden of the house, Iris continued to draw her flowers on the ground every day, but now they represented not only consolation for sadness, they represented gratitude for joy, celebration for love found, and above all, hope that beautiful flowers can grow even in the most difficult soils when they are watered with compassion and cared for with unconditional love. A year after the day Benedict had found a little girl consoling his pain in the cemetery, he finally understood the most important lesson that Iris had taught him: that true wealth is not in what we accumulate, but in what we offer. It is not in the power we exert over others, but in the kindness we choose to demonstrate. It is not in the achievements we make alone, but in the family we build with love, one person at a time, one gesture of compassion at a time, one flower drawn on the ground at a time.